There comes a point in life when comfort becomes the enemy of growth. Tragically, for many, that point arrives after 70. A time that should be a celebration of wisdom and clarity, but instead becomes a slow erosion of potential. Why? Because of habits. Habits no one warns you about. Habits that quietly destroy the body, the mind, and the soul. Let's talk about them. 6 of them. Not to criticize, but to confront, because confrontation with the truth is the first step toward renewal. 1. Stop neglecting physical movement. The body is not a machine that wears down from use. It's a system that thrives on it. The paradox is clear. If you stop moving because you're tired or old, you become tired and old much quicker. Your joints stiffen, your muscles shrink, and your brain, which depends on physical movement to regulate neurotransmitters, begins to atrophy. Stand up, walk, stretch, carry your groceries, climb stairs. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And hard is what keeps you alive. 2. Stop withdrawing from social life. The great lie is that solitude in old age is natural. It isn't. It's a modern disease. Isolation strips you of your role in the world. You stop seeing yourself as a participant and begin to see yourself as an observer, or worse, a burden. That is deadly. You are still a source of stories, of wisdom, of grounding. Call your family, join a group, volunteer. The moment you lose human connection is the moment your identity begins to dissolve. 3. Stop abandoning purpose. You need something to get up for, a reason. Without it, the days blur. Time becomes weightless, and where there is no responsibility, there is no meaning. You are still capable of tremendous contribution through mentorship, creativity, service, or spirituality. Purpose does not retire, it transforms. 4. Stop resisting new learning. When you stop learning, you start dying. The refusal to adapt, to engage with a changing world, doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. Read new books, ask questions, use technology. Confusion is not failure, it's the path to growth. And growth is how the mind stays alive. 5. Stop blindly trusting every pill. Health is not something that happens to you, it's something you negotiate with. Over-medication is an epidemic among the elderly, often fueled by passive acceptance of authority. Know what you're putting in your body. Ask why, demand clarity, because the moment you stop being an active agent in your own well-being, you hand over your freedom. 6. Stop living in the past. There is wisdom in memory, yes. But to remain shackled to nostalgia is to miss the beauty of now. The present is not lesser, it's just different. Romanticizing the past while resenting the present is a form of spiritual decay. Gratitude lives in the present. So does peace. So stop doing what no one warns you is slowly killing you, and start reclaiming the vitality that remains, because it is there. Dormant maybe, but not gone. After all, the sunset is often more breathtaking than the sunrise, but only for those who stay awake long enough to see it. There's a subtle betrayal that happens as we age, not necessarily from the body itself, but from our beliefs about it. Somewhere along the way, people begin to internalize a dangerous narrative that aging means slowing down, pulling back, doing less, that rest becomes the central goal. But rest, when detached from effort, is not rejuvenating, it's numbing. And over time, it strips you of your vitality. The body does not deteriorate simply because of age, it deteriorates because of disuse. It atrophies in the absence of demand. It falters when we stop asking something of it. After the age of 70, movement is no longer optional, it becomes essential. This doesn't mean becoming an athlete or taking on Herculean tasks, but it does mean weaving deliberate physical motion into your daily rhythm. Without it, everything begins to collapse. Muscles shrink, bones lose density, joints stiffen, balance declines, and most importantly, the brain, which relies on physical feedback from the body, begins to suffer. People often say, I'm just not as sharp as I used to be, or my memory isn't what it was. Yes, some of that is natural, but a large part of it is preventable. Physical activity, even something as simple as walking or light stretching, activates neural pathways that keep the brain alive. It generates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a compound that preserves cognitive function, improves memory, and reduces the risk of dementia. When someone stops moving, they don't just lose strength. They lose the biological signals that tell the brain it's still needed. They shrink in more than one way. Their world becomes smaller, from the living room to the kitchen, then maybe just a chair by the window. Their sense of agency fades. There's a profound connection between movement and freedom, and when you lose one, you inevitably lose the other. But there is still potential. Countless individuals in their 70s, 80s, and beyond begin walking daily, practicing light yoga, lifting small weights, and what happens? Their energy returns, their posture improves, their pain reduces, their confidence surges. The key is not to compare yourself to your younger self, but to measure progress from where you are now. There's something deeply noble about choosing to move despite discomfort. Not out of vanity, not for praise, but because it declares, I'm still here. I still have something to offer. That declaration changes everything, how you eat, sleep, and see the day ahead. Neglecting movement is not just physical, it's philosophical. It's a quiet resignation, and resignation becomes death in slow motion. So stretch, walk, take the stairs, do it because it matters. Not to the world, but to yourself. Movement tells your body it still matters. Your mind, it's still in the game. And your spirit, that it still has somewhere to go. There's another quiet danger that settles in with age. The slow retreat from the world. Social circles shrink. Solitude becomes the default. Friends move away. Children get busy. And suddenly, there's more silence than conversation, more empty space than connection. This withdrawal may feel subtle, but it's not benign. It's often the beginning of a decline that no medication or miracle cure can reverse. Humans are social creatures. Our minds are shaped by interaction. The most potent form of stimulation is conversation, real engaged dialogue where stories are shared, ideas exchanged, laughter sparked, and identity affirmed. Without it, we begin to forget who we are. We become passive observers. Eventually, we begin to believe we no longer matter. That belief is dangerous. When no one depends on your presence, the spirit begins to dim. And that loneliness, often hidden behind smiles and routine, is a public health crisis. It mimics chronic illness. It damages the immune system. But it is not inevitable. It is a response to fear of being a burden, of rejection, of not being interesting anymore. That fear must be met with courage. The courage to say, I still have something to give, even if your calendar is empty, because you do. A lifetime of wisdom, emotional depth, and stories that others need, even if they don't say it. So make the call. Start the conversation, show up, invite someone, use technology, learn how to video chat. It doesn't make you old, it makes you brave. You don't need dozens of friends, just a few honest connections. People who see you, hear you, reflect you back to yourself. Reach out. Interdependence is not weakness, it's the foundation of humanity. Relationships give us mirrors. Without them, we forget who we are. Purpose, movement, connection. These are not luxuries of youth. They are necessities of life at every age. You may not realize it now, but someone needs to hear from you. When you isolate, you deny yourself and the world your presence, your wisdom, your light. So don't withdraw. Push back with presence, with curiosity, with courage. The world still needs you. And maybe, just maybe, you still need it too. Initiative dies when people stop creating, not because they are incapable, but because they've been led to believe that meaning is reserved for those with titles and timetables. The truth is, the later years of life can be the most purposeful of all if you choose it. This is the season of distillation and refinement. You've seen enough to know what's real, what lasts, what matters. That insight is invaluable, and if you share it through mentoring, storytelling, writing, or simple presence, you become a guide for others, a stabilizing force in a chaotic world. But you must resist the temptation to drift. Drifting is seductive. It tells you to rest more, do less, watch more, think less. Yet, rest without purpose leads to decay. The body weakens, the mind dulls, and the heart begins to close. Every living thing needs a reason to rise, not just physically, but spiritually. And that reason cannot be handed to you. It must be chosen, crafted, reclaimed. There's a moral dimension to purpose. You carry a responsibility to stay engaged, not only for yourself, but for your community, your family, your culture. They need your perspective, your presence, your accumulated wisdom. Too often, society puts the elderly on a shelf, treating them as relics instead of resources. But you are not here to fade away quietly. You are here to deepen, to clarify, to be a living example of what it means to endure and evolve. So ask yourself, what is unfinished in me? What have I not yet given? Where can I still be of service? What wakes me up inside, even just a little? Then pursue it, not perfectly, not frantically, but faithfully, because the soul does not retire. Meaning is not a stage of life, it is a state of being. When you stop abandoning purpose, you start reclaiming yourself. You start living, not as someone waiting for the end, but as someone still building, still shaping, still becoming. There is a quiet death that begins the moment a person decides they've learned enough. It doesn't happen all at once, it's gradual, like rust on iron. A little stiffness here, a little confusion there. A shrug when confronted with something unfamiliar. A phone that's too complicated. A word that doesn't make sense. A new idea that feels threatening. The world keeps changing, and instead of moving with it, some choose to step aside and let it pass by. The cost of that choice is steep. When the mind stops engaging with the unfamiliar, it starts shrinking within the familiar. Curiosity fades, flexibility dies. The self becomes a fixed point in a moving world. That dissonance creates frustration, resentment, and eventually irrelevance. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it mustn't be. Learning is not something we outgrow. It is not a luxury of youth. It is a biological and spiritual necessity at every age. The brain, even after 70, retains a capacity called neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt, rewire, and create new connections. But like a muscle, it only develops when challenged, when used, when pushed beyond its comfort. The elderly who embrace learning, even in small ways, often experience greater mental sharpness, better mood regulation, and a stronger sense of identity. Because learning is not just about absorbing information, it's about staying engaged with life. The refusal to learn new things, whether it's technology, ideas, skills, or perspectives, is not just a cognitive choice, it's an emotional defense. It often stems from fear, fear of failure, fear of looking foolish, fear of being left behind. But, ironically, avoiding the new is exactly what guarantees being left behind. The modern world doesn't slow down for anyone, and if you're not careful, the refusal to adapt turns into resentment. You begin to resent the pace of things, the tools people use, the language they speak, and that resentment, in turn, isolates you even further. You stop participating, you stop being part of the conversation, you start living on the edges. But what if instead you leaned in? What if you embraced the discomfort that comes with not knowing? Not as a weakness, but as a challenge. There is something incredibly noble about a person who keeps learning late into life. A person who says, "Teach me," instead of "I already know." A person who picks up a book they don't understand, downloads an app they're unsure about, or listens to a perspective they disagree with, not to prove themselves right, but to expand the boundaries of their world. That kind of posture isn't common, but it is powerful. It's the kind of mindset that keeps people alive on the inside. You don't need to become an expert. That's not the point. The point is to keep your internal world moving, stretching, reaching. Read articles, take courses, learn a new language, even just a few words. Ask your grandchildren to show you how to use that device. Sit with people younger than you and ask them questions. Let yourself be the student again. Because when you're a student, you are connected to the flow of life. You remain relevant not just to others, but to yourself. There's something deeply humbling and invigorating about not knowing something in a society that often worships certainty. Curiosity becomes a quiet act of rebellion. It says, I'm not done yet, and you're not. The moment you tell yourself there's nothing more to understand, you've locked yourself in a cage. But when you stay open, truly open, the world opens up to you in return. You may not move as fast. You may need to ask twice. That's okay. The point isn't perfection, it's participation. It's staying awake mentally and emotionally to the world as it is now, not as it was. So don't resist the new. Let it challenge you. Let it stretch you. Because when you keep learning, you keep growing. And when you keep growing, age becomes a process of unfolding, not of closing down. Acknowledge your fear and you release it. When you share your joy or your love, you multiply it. But if you keep those emotions locked inside, they fester and become something much more difficult to deal with. Emotional well-being also involves self-compassion, the ability to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a dear friend. Aging can bring about feelings of inadequacy or frustration, particularly when you can no longer do the things you once could. It's easy to become your own harshest critic, berating yourself for physical or mental limitations. But this kind of negative self-talk only compounds emotional distress. To truly care for your emotional health, you must develop the practice of self-forgiveness and acceptance. It's okay to not have everything figured out. It's okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to feel a little lost at times. What matters is that you give yourself the permission to feel all of it without judgment. Lastly, emotional well-being in later years also involves cultivating relationships that nourish you. No one is truly meant to go through life alone, especially not in the later years. The people around you, those who listen, who empathize, who make you laugh, are not just companions. They are essential to your emotional survival. They provide the mirror through which you see yourself. They offer perspectives you may not be able to see on your own. So invest in those relationships. Keep reaching out. Keep connecting. Don't let age turn you into an emotional hermit. Make time for those who elevate your spirit and let them know that they matter. The emotional landscape of aging is complex, but it is also rich with opportunity for growth, for healing, and for deeper connection to yourself and others. If you stop neglecting your emotional health, you open the door to a more meaningful, fulfilled life. One that doesn't avoid the hard feelings, but faces them head on, embraces them, and transforms them into wisdom.